Hey everybody, welcome to the December coffee chat. I hope everyone's doing well. Does everyone have their coffee ready? Did anyone dare to bring peppermint Baileys or schnapps to add to their hot chocolate or coffee this morning for the festive holidayness? I'm working, so I didn't. I wanted to though.
No guts.
I thought you might be appalled if I was drinking alcohol at 10 a.m. in the morning, Jeff.
All are impressed.
Well, I do have a very large jug of Baileys at home. I could have brought it. Which I'm really for my father, though.
Okay.
I don't drink coffee. All right, well, we'll give it a few more minutes here to see if anybody else is popping on for the coffee chat. But again, welcome. Remember, today is all just about answering questions, having a conversation. So of course, if any of you have any conversations, definitely drop them in the chat button and the question button, and we'll make sure we get those answered, or we can even just kick off the day with them. But how's everybody doing? How was Hanukkah, Jeff?
It was nice.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
You know, more about the giving than receiving, and so it worked out to be a very nice, nice holiday.
Very cool. Have you guys got any Christmas plans, Eric, Anthony?
You know, I'll be seeing family over Christmas. I found out it'll actually be easier. So for those watching who may not know, this is my first Christmas as a newlywed. And certainly I've dealt with the in-laws and managing how we get to Christmas on my side and their side in the years past when we were still dating and just engaged. But it's actually going to be a lot easier this year, because I found out my dad is going to go play Santa Christmas Eve for a friend of his and for their grandkids. So he was like, well, you don't really need to worry about me for Christmas Eve. We'll figure out another time to do it. And, you know, that was nice because it took a little pressure off of the logistics around this time of year.
Oh my gosh, has anybody had that done to them before, like as a kid? That was one of the best Christmases I can remember.
I was a Santa Claus.
Were you? And like surprised a family with kids?
I was walking into an apartment one night dressed as Santa Claus, and this dad and his kid walked in, and I hear, "Dad, it's Santa Claus!" I mean, it was unbelievable.
That is
And
so
this was
awesome.
a great suit too, so it was first class.
That is so cool.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I remember my parents, they, the Santa Claus in town, we had the whole family over at our house for Christmas Eve. They met him in the garage and filled a bag full of presents for the whole family. My mom had gotten Christmas presents for everybody that was there. And Santa literally showed up and gave out Christmas presents to everyone. It was the coolest thing. I was probably 8 maybe, but it was just awesome.
Best experiences.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was great. You do anything fun with your kids, Eric?
Yeah, so we're going to be going to my side of the family. We kind of alternate Thanksgiving and Christmas for alternating holidays with the different sides of the family. But we've been trying to do a lot of like Christmas kind of experiences leading up to it. So a couple weekends ago, we went somewhere and there was a Santa Claus out, like, and they were having a big tree outside, and my son loves like fire trucks and stuff, so there's all the fire truck and emergency truck there, so you got to sit inside of that at that time frame. And then just the different activities of putting up the Christmas tree. We put a little gingerbread house together, and so that was kind of fun with the family. So a lot of different activities to get kind of in the holiday mood.
Very cool. That's exciting. That's really fun. How about any of you guys out there in the audience? Do you have any Christmas memories or traditions? You should drop that in the chat. We'd love to hear about it. Or if you've got a question, you can like raise your hand, jump on the call, drop it in the questions box, because this is all just about questions and answers. But we'll keep her going here. Anthony, why don't you just give us like your market update thoughts? I'm sure people are curious about Omicron and market impact and the recent volatility we've had. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think anyone who's been paying attention has noticed that the market's been a little bouncy lately. In fact, that was the term I used a week or so ago when I made one of my weekly videos. You can find them all on our YouTube channel. But I called it market bounciness, because you'll have a day where the market drops 1%, and then you'll have the next day it goes back up by 1%, and then it'll drop 1.5% and go back up. And what this is a little bit of reaction to, as you said, Kim, the Omicron variant and the uncertainty that creates, because that's really what the market's reacting to is this better than the Delta variant? Is it worse? Is this a new, chapter of the pandemic, or is it just another footnote in the story? And, as far as that goes, we're leaning on, and by we, I mean our group, we're leaning on our health experts just as much as you all are. So, we watch the headlines very closely. At least as it stands right now, it does seem like it may be a mild form of the condition of COVID. And if that holds up, I think all of this market bounciness is short-lived. That's not to say that we're out of the woods with the pandemic, but to kind of put it in perspective, just yesterday, I made a video, and it'll be coming out within the next week or so, about the chief global strategist from JP Morgan saying they think 2022 will mark the end of the pandemic. And that's from a market and economic perspective. But I would say, I think that's where we're headed. So Omicron variant aside, and we need to continue to watch that, I think there are good things ahead. It's just, we might have a few bumps in the road to get there.
Anthony, if people don't pick up your videos when they're emailed out, where can they find them?
Yeah, so I make a video every week. It's actually posted on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page. And the Facebook post is just a link to the YouTube post. So I would really encourage, if you're on this call, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, not just for my weekly updates, but we've got replays of all of our events from the past year plus. They're great pieces to just reference if you have a question, and certainly get in touch with us for questions. But a lot of the questions you might have, or some questions you may not even know that you should have, are answered on our YouTube page. And it's just another way for you to interact with us. So I would really encourage, if you're willing, to go on there and subscribe so you get updated about our latest videos.
What's the address?
So if you go to YouTube and you type in Stein Financial Group, that will get you there. Our YouTube channel is Stein Financial Group. You can also get there from our website, which is steinfinancialgroup.com. So pretty much put that phrase into Google, Stein Financial Group, and that'll bring you to all of our different avenues here.
There's also a link to it in most of the emails that you guys get from us
Yep.
on anything. Do we have any YouTube subscribers with us today? Anybody watching Anthony's videos on a regular
I
basis?
watch them all.
Oh, Jeff's our main YouTube subscriber. Jeff.
Well, I get special, Anthony lets me see them ahead of time.
Yeah.
Okay. You get a preview before the rest of us? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I did have one other question. There seems to be a lot of talk about the Fed meeting, which is what, tomorrow?
Yep.
What should we be expecting out of that? Any idea?
It seems like public sentiment, and I shouldn't just say seems like, because this was reported today that a new survey of sort of business leaders thinks that the Fed will move on interest rates maybe a little sooner next year than we first thought. And what I mean by that is the Federal Reserve helps to set a level of interest rates in our country by the amount of purchases or the amount of money they kind of push out into the economy. And I need a longer video to go through all the mechanisms by which they do that. But basically, what we expect now is they may hint or intimate that interest rates may start rising in June of next year, rather than kind of where we were predicting of August, September range. That's not a huge deal as far as I'm concerned. Why they may be doing that is the inflation numbers that have come out have continued to remain high. And the number one tool to sort of combat the inflation that we're seeing is by raising interest rates. So if they make the move to raise them sooner, which is now what people are predicting, that indicates that they believe it's a little bit more serious than it was before. Now, that's not to say it's imminent threat, because they'd move today if they felt that way. But moving up our timeline by a few months, which is kind of what people are expecting, that would indicate, yep, we're taking this seriously. We need to make a move maybe sooner rather than later to sort of combat this inflation. So it's an important step that they do this. And the fact that they may move it up a couple months just means, hey, the numbers came in maybe a little higher than they expected. So we're kind of reading between the lines on all that.
Very good.
Could I ask maybe a follow-up question for Eric and Anthony?
Yeah.
And it has to do with everything we're hearing about supply chain, it has, implications as would relate to inflation. Are these legitimate issues? If they are legitimate, how legitimate? Things are certainly, some of them are more expensive. You're hearing about, the Star Tribune on the front page said there's a Christmas tree shortage all of a sudden, which I was told a week ago there was no Christmas tree shortage. I'd love to hear both of your thoughts as to, what's going on here, and should this be something that we need to be concerned about?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. One of the things that we're kind of seeing when it comes to supply chain, and then also with inflation, kind of like Anthony mentioned, is I've had so many conversations with people who they'll buy something in like a piece of furniture in February, but they don't get it until like August or September. So there's such a delay in getting the different pieces of furniture, appliances, vehicles, computers. And so that's on the consumer side, but also on the business side. So microchips for phones and computers and electronics, cars, they're all so delayed right now. And so on one side, we have people who are saying, all right, I want to buy these items and I'm willing to wait. And so there's that pent up demand. And so pent up demand is a good thing for the economy, because when that's kind of what keeps the economy moving forward, that people are willing to purchase and buy things. And so we have that going on. We have some that are saying, I'm willing to wait until I can actually buy and get my good kind of right away. But then now when we throw in this inflation variable to it, I believe there's going to be a lot more of the, I do want to buy that new kitchen table. I want to buy that piece of furniture or the vehicle. And if inflation is going to be as high as it is, I'll buy it now, kind of lock in the price that I'll be able to get now, because I don't know what inflation will be another 3 months, 6 months from now. And so that is another boost to the economy, that people are going out and purchasing some of those things that they're wanting to buy, because potentially it's at a better price now than it will be, which is kind of an interesting perspective, because a while ago I was having the conversations with individuals where they were saying, I'm not going to purchase something in hopes that some of the higher prices kind of go back down. So a while ago it was lumber prices were so high, so the remodel of the house or the remodel of the bathroom or the kitchen, whatever it might be, the price of just the goods themselves, but then also there's a supply chain or a supply of labor. We have less workers now, and so prices are higher that way. And so, yeah, it's been kind of back and forth. Overall, people are still going out and purchasing, and we're kind of navigating through that supply chain. But overall, it's still been a positive thing for the economy, and hopefully we kind of get things back in line. But that kind of is where we're at this point.
It sounds like you fall into the camp that some of these higher prices are here to stay.
Yeah, I was kind of in the couple months ago, I was more in the kind of the prices are high, they're kind of navigating back down. But I'm kind of in the camp now where it seems like they're here to stay at least for a while. And so we'll kind of see how it all plays out. But between all the different pieces going on, whether it's the potential for higher interest rates, the supply chain, kind of the as we've been in a strong economy, all those different pieces, especially with the lack of workers, we're seeing a lot of different organizations and companies having to raise wages to entice people to work for them, and just all those different pieces increase pricing, and that then gets passed on to the goods and services. So the more I'm seeing kind of that transition, I believe we may have some higher prices for a while now.
Yeah, and I agree with what Eric said, and I think we're at a stage now where the higher prices that we're seeing are not just going to unravel themselves overnight. I mean, a couple of quick stories. We work with someone, I'll keep personal details vague, who works in international logistics. And I was sitting down with them a month or so ago, and they said, when you hear on the news that there's a supply chain bottleneck, that kind of just sounds like a jargony term. What does that really mean? Well, for this person, what it meant was shipping containers that came from overseas that they're working on currently used to cost $2,000 to $3,000 for the whole procedure of unloading on the ships and getting the items to where they need to go and da 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 da. That's an oversimplification, but let's call it that. Now it's upwards of $10,000 per container. And when you get a magnification of price like that, you know that the companies who are doing these products or shipping these products are not just going to eat that cost. So the question, why are prices going up? There's no one reason, but that's kind of a good illustration of why things are more expensive. It's more expensive to get things places. And that goes from furniture or appliances. Many people watching, if you've tried to buy anything large like that, or, you know, in my experience, and I feel comfortable saying this because my wife won't be watching, but her Christmas gift this year, I was looking around and I looked at an iPad, for example. She's got a tablet. She kind of went on the lower end when she bought it a couple years ago, and it's given her problems. And I thought, ooh, that's a good idea. I looked on Apple's website. If you've looked lately how quick you can get an iPad, it's January 26th that they'll ship by is the soonest time. And I said, well, it was a good idea, but I don't know if that's going to work for a Christmas gift. So, you know, that just goes into why are things getting more expensive? It's just the supply is way down, whether that's because manufacturing stopped or because things are just more expensive to get places. So I think this is good. It's going to eventually get back to closer to where it was pre-pandemic, but it's going to take a while to get there.
I want to know why your wife doesn't watch you on YouTube.
Yeah.
The reason she doesn't
Why
watch
isn't she a subscriber,
is
Anthony?
because she's a techer and she'll be teaching right now.
She can still subscribe.
Yeah,
and watch
so I'll
the
make
videos.
sure she doesn't see this YouTube video before Christmas happens.
Well, you're not getting her an iPad anyway.
I
We'll
know.
show up till January 26th.
Yep, so
So.
I didn't spoil everything, but I don't want to give away my thought process because you could eliminate some options too.
Oh man. So what I'd like to know, anybody on the line, is anybody planning a large purchase? Anybody else run into these same issues for Christmas presents that like Anthony's commenting on, or you know, Eric pointed out like people holding back on maybe remodels because all of a sudden the price of lumber is ridiculously high these days. My husband and I were joking about the cost of used cars being so inflated, and I was like, well, your Civic better keep driving because we can't afford a used car with all these inflated prices. He drives a 2011 Honda Civic with like 240,000 miles on it, so it's probably bumping up the back door needing to be replaced. And so I hope it just doesn't happen before those used car prices come back down because there's a shortage of them. Has anybody driven by a used car lot?
They're pretty empty right now.
Yeah, even just a brand new car lot, they're pretty empty. I don't know if anybody is noticing that themselves. You guys could drop a chat or comment down there in the chat bucket and let us know. But if anybody's got a question, shoot away. We'd love to answer it. I know one thing that we've been communicating a lot about since it's the end of the year is RMDs, required minimum distributions. So I wanted to take a minute and just make sure that if any of you guys here on the coffee chat with us today have a question about RMDs or anything like that, that we make sure we get those answered. I know, Eric, if you want to chime in with any of your thoughts regarding RMDs and what people should be thinking about here towards the end of the year, and maybe even how they relate to QCDs.
I'll even jump in real fast. The reason this is even an issue is that last year you had the right to shut your RMD off.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, you never turned it back on. So we have been scrambling to communicate that we want to make sure that things are taken care of. So it is a big deal. We've got about, what is today, the 14th? So we've got maybe 10 days to get this done. Let us help you help us, as they say. So we're moving. I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead, though.
No, that's a great point, just because a lot of people do set up an automatic with required minimum distribution, RMD required minimum distribution. A lot of people set it up where automatically every year just comes out, but because last year it was waived, we had a lot of people who opted to not take their required minimum distribution since there was not one last year. And so now, because it is no longer just automatic, having to reestablish it. So kind of, we'll take a step back. Required minimum distribution, that is IRS rule that if you're 72 and older, from any of your pre-tax retirement accounts, you have to pull money out of your account.
And to 70 and a half.
So 70 and a half was a couple years ago that they changed the rule to move it to 72. And so if you happen to fall in that window where you were in the 70 and a half range, then you would have been starting at the 70 and a half, but otherwise the new rule is now at 72 for moving
I
forward.
wish somebody would tell me these things.
So yeah, whether it's an IRA, 401k, 457, 403b, any of those accounts that are those pre-tax retirement accounts, there's a certain percentage that you have to take out. If you need help with that, let us know. We can help kind of calculate what that number is. And that's for any of those accounts. And so if you have multiple places that you're having these different accounts, just remember to look at all those different areas. Did I take that required minimum distribution for the year? Make sure you check that box because there's a tax penalty for not taking it. So that's the required minimum distribution. And then each year that distribution is required once again. So you start at 72, or like Jeff said, a few people are still working in that 70 and a half age range. But then each year that required minimum distribution will continue onward. And that's a taxable event. And so whether you're taking it for this year or going into 2022, if that might be your first year that you're going to be turning 72, just be aware that you're going to be starting to have to start for next year then for that required minimum distribution. And so for tax purposes, just plan on having that amount come out of your account. And once again, if you have questions on it, let us know. But then Kim, you did mention something about the QCD, so qualified charitable distribution. And so I love giving, and this is an IRS rule that allows you to give on a more tax-favored, tax-marked way. A lot of people do associate it with their required minimum distribution. And so what this qualified charitable distribution is instead of the money coming out of I'll use the example of the IRA for the pre-tax accounts, or instead of it coming out of the IRA going to you and it's a taxable event, you can direct that some or all of that required minimum distribution, or actually even more than that, you could direct that to go directly to a charity of choice. And when it goes to that charity, it's not taxable to you, not taxable to the charity. It's if you're in that age requirement of the required minimum distribution, it satisfies that portion of your distribution. And it's a great way to be able to donate, whether you're donating now or something that you'd like to start up now or into the future. You can just do it a lot more tax efficiently that way, especially with the tax bill, where if you're taking that standard deduction, you're not really getting a tax benefit for those donations. So this allows you a way to donate on a more tax favored basis. And so it's one of those that if you're donating, maybe you make that switch from having it coming from the bank account or coming from the credit card, and you switch it to coming from your retirement account and save yourself some tax dollars along the way.
Yeah, very cool. What about like other ways of gifting? Like what if I just wanted to gift to my grandkids some cash out of my accounts, or I wanted to help out my kids with some expenses of their own? Like what are the gifting rules, or like what kind of rules are there around being able to do that, or benefits to doing that? Eric, Anthony, either one of you, Jeff?
Yeah, well, so the question we get often is, I want to give some money to my kids. What's the most efficient way for me to do that? And because technically you can give as much money as you want, but one of the key points is we would like usually to be able to give money to the kids without them necessarily having to pay taxes again on it. So there's a free gifting limit every year of $15,000 per person. Actually, I believe it's going up to $16,000 in 2022. But you can give that amount per person that you want to give it to, and they will be able to receive it tax-free. Now, that's a key point, because if you take the money out of one of your retirement accounts, you will still pay taxes on it. It's just they will be able to receive it tax-free. But that's a great way to do it. There's also potentially other ways to help out financially besides just gifting cash. If you have children or grandchildren who may have education expenses upcoming, a great thing to do for them is to open an education savings account. There's a few different options. I won't go through all of them here, but it actually allows you to contribute money to an account that they can then use to fund their education. And then in a lot of cases, if they use the money directly for education, or even books, for example, when they go to college, it's tax-free to take the money out of the account that you put it into. So it's a powerful tool that way. This goes back, though, in general, to one of the things that I always say, which is I love the idea of helping out your kids or your loved ones or whoever while you're still around to enjoy doing it. And it's fantastic to leave a legacy behind after you're gone. And we can absolutely help you do that. But I love the idea of how can I help them out now where I can kind of see the fruits of my labor, where I can see what they then use that money for, or what they're able to spend on, or this or that. So the gifting is $15,000, going to go up to $16,000. There's also education accounts, but what's going to work best for you? We should talk about it, because I love the impulse of saying, I want to be able to see them enjoy this gift that I'm giving them. That's half the fun of it, right? So ask us more if you've got a specific situation that you want us to dig into for you.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, what if I wanted to give somebody $20,000?
Yeah, so you can absolutely do that. The thing you should know is that if you give anything above that $16,000 threshold, that will be taxable to the person who receives it. So that absolutely happens, and we've helped with that before, and in some cases there's a need for that. So it's absolutely legal, there's no fees or anything, it's just it can become a taxable event for the person receiving the funds. So it's something to keep in mind depending on what you want to do with your assets and how much you'd like to give.
I have the ability, though, to, like, let's say there's my kid or my grandkid incurred a bunch of medical expenses. Instead of gifting cash, I could just directly pay the hospital, for example, right?
Yeah.
And then there wouldn't be a taxable incident. So let's say there was a $20,000 medical bill that I wanted to help the family out with, right?
Yeah, so medical bills, if you go directly to the medical provider, that $15,000 isn't applicable, so you can pay directly and help out in that way. Same with education. So if you pay directly to the school or the college or whatever it might be, that also doesn't apply with that $15,000. So there's other ways to be able to gift above and beyond that $15,000 or in tandem with that. And so yes, the medical example is a way that you go directly to the hospital or the clinic or whatever, and it's a nice way to be able to help those loved ones.
All right. What about if I want to, so like I really want to gift my son Disney stock for a couple reasons. Number one, my kid is spoiled. He's, he's an only child. He has plenty of things, but he likes Disney. And so instead of giving him more toys, I think it'd be fun to give him Disney stock, and then he can like watch it grow. We talk about money a lot. I also think it's cool because Disney is actually still one of the only companies that will mail you a stock certificate. So you can still get a certificate, and it has like all the Disney characters like around the outside of it. And I think it has like Walt Disney's signature on it or something like that. So like it's fancy and cool. So they can still get something. So what about ideas of like gifting a stock instead of, a gift? Or like my teenager keeps asking for an iPhone and I'm just going to give them Apple stock instead because I'm not going to give them the iPhone. Like, what about ideas like that for gifting?
Jeff, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think it's a neat idea. And there's a couple nuancy things to it. If I gift the Disney stock, I don't have that's something I'm going to have to play with, etc. A financial gift like that is intended for a longer term. It's fascinating how many of the people we are fortunate enough to work with walk in with that type of a stock or financial item that their parents had given them when they were 12 years old or whatever. So those are fun things, and certainly the right choices, the Apple stock concept versus the Apple phone, the Disney stock, Google, those type of things. to me, it plants that little seed that's going to take them down that path of, I have this money now that is sitting here, and in many cases, I want to find out a little bit more about it. It's going to start taking me down that path of learning about these financial instruments. So it's a very interesting concept that I would have no hesitancy in saying, yeah, you know, whether it's a share of stock or a little bit more than that, these are really neat gifts. And Kim, I wouldn't hesitate to take that certificate and frame it, put it up on the wall, and it's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see kind of, yeah, what we'll do with that, if we'll for sure do it or not. But I wish I would have bought it back in March in 2020 when it was less than $100 a share. So we'll see what I can make happen
I
this
think
time
it's got
around.
a pretty good upside, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. It probably does. All right, well, does anybody else have any questions out there or any other thoughts?
And by the way, please, if you have a question and it's a more personal question that maybe you want to ask to us one-on-one, please get in touch with us after it. Certainly, if you don't have to ask the question in front of the group, if you'd rather just talk to us privately about it. So we're always available for those type of things.
Another thing I thought of, going back to the required minimum distribution, a lot of times we talk about the age 72, but just remember, if you happened to inherit a retirement account, that there is still required minimum distributions. There's different rules depending on a lot of different pieces there. So if you have questions on that part, definitely reach out to us and we can help with that. But yes, if you have inherited a retirement account, there may be that required minimum distribution implication regardless of age right there. So that's another thing, just to, if you have that, to be aware of it.
Eric, that seems like, you know, is that a big deal? You know, why would I care about missing my minimum distribution or my inherited IRA distribution?
Yeah, no, it is a big deal. So there's tax penalties associated. There's different tax penalties for different aspects of the tax code. The IRS made the required minimum distribution a 50% penalty of whatever that required amount is. And so I'll use the example, if you were required to take out $1,000 and you didn't do that, well, 50% is a $500 tax penalty for not taking it. So it is a big deal. It's a pretty severe penalty. And I'd much rather have you have your own money, or to be able to, we talk about a lot about gifting and do something with it, as opposed to having a penalty and having it just all go back to the IRS.
That's good. I agree. It's something you need to stay on top of. Are there ways to, in quotes, unravel it if, you know, we have made an error?
Yeah, there's different ways to try to kind of get it taken care of, and then you are still subject to the IRS whether or not they kind of accept it. But working with a tax person, you can ask us some questions along the way to try to kind of make it right. But the best answer is just get it taken care of. We still have some time this year, and so to make it happen is so much easier than trying to unravel it after the fact.
You might know that you're working on something right now, so I just want to lay out for our friends that are watching, that will be watching on the video replay. There's a lot of different tax items that are making their way through Congress right now, and we're going to absolutely be communicating to you not only what they are, but strategies as to how to work with them should they, and in many cases, some of the stuff that's going through looks like it will become a change in tax code or a change in law. So stay tuned. Take a moment to at least open those emails that you might be getting and see if we're talking about some of those laws that have happened. Some of the things that appear to be pending would be, for example, the minimum distribution age going from 72 to age 75. There's, and this is not necessarily going to be impactful for some of the people here, but 3 of the people that I'm sitting with right now may be impacted by changes in Social Security to help ensure that it remains a solvent benefit. So those are just little things. There's some bigger things, especially impactful to people with higher sums of money that appear to be making their way in. You know, it's kind of, sneaky is not a good word, but the government or the legislature will tend to stick some of these bills into something that seems to have nothing to do with taxes. So there's word that in the Build Back Better bill, there are some things that will be impactful to certain taxpayers because Congress doesn't want it to be out there that they're doing these things and all of a sudden they happen, and now we've got to deal with them. And what's interesting also is that the rumor is that many of these items may become retroactive. So you won't have an opportunity to take steps and move things around in order to avoid some of these things. They'll take place, and when they take place, it's a done deal, and now we're just going to have to work with it. So we're going to try to keep you informed as to these things as they're talked about, as they're coming down the pipe, and certainly as they become reality, what is going to be the best way to deal with them. So just wanted to give you a heads up there.
No, yeah, that's great. I was distracted for a minute. I'm getting ready for our wheel spin to see who gets their free cup of coffee on us. So I was just getting everybody's names in there. But in terms of other things to be thinking about towards the end of the year, so like I know for myself, I'm thinking, oh shoot, it's the end of the year. Should I be making any more contributions to like my IRA or my Roth IRA? Do I really have to get them in by December 31st? Or do I have like later to get that in? Like, how does that work? Who'd like to take that one?
I'll give you an example that this morning I'm talking to my accountant, and he's given me a strategy that we're going to be following, but I have to have the money available before December 31st in order to utilize this strategy, pay a tax, and then get it credited against, I think it's my state tax, and it works out to be in my favor. So there are nuancey things, but we're really getting to a point where we're about out of time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Cetera has told us in regards to, for example, paperwork that's submitted. Is it the 26th, or is that the last day that we can take paperwork to have it credited for this year?
Yeah, somewhere in there, I don't recall offhand. So like anything has to be officially processed by the end of the year, but to have enough time for processing purposes, give it a couple extra days in there, but I don't recall what that deadline actually is offhand right now.
Yeah.
So I know how busy everybody is, but take a moment to look at your own financial position at this point in time. And, you know, yesterday should have been the day that we talked about it. And we're going to do everything we can to make these things happen, but we are really running out of time.
Yeah, and know that, you know, if we're doing something, I'm vague because it could be many things, but if we're trying to get something done before the end of the year, we want to try to have at least a week or two lead time, because we've got holidays coming up where processing can be slower. And we've had it before where somebody's running down to drop off a check or sign a piece of paperwork on New Year's Eve, and that's not fun for anybody. So, you know, let's be proactive about it. A lot of these end of year things tend to coincide with taxes. This is my second point. And that's something we can absolutely help you navigate. However, we're not accountants. And if you are normally do your taxes, but you've got to a situation where you say, I'd like to have, you know, an accountant look at this, or you need, in general, just some tax advice. We may not be accountants, but we know some pretty good ones. So if you need help in that realm, we can definitely point you in the right direction as well. And that's something where we can work together, investments and taxes, to make that kind of work as best it can in your favor. So that's also my plug for, if you need, you know, some connections, we've got some people we'd recommend.
And then just to kind of go back to the initial question there, a lot of pieces are end of year, so calendar year is what you're working with. Going back to the, can I make an IRA contribution, Roth IRA contribution? If you're still working, that associates with the tax deadline, so April 15th. So for those type of contributions, you have some time to still count for this year, but a lot of the other aspects of a financial picture are calendar year. So that's where we have that cutoff date at the end of the year here coming up here soon.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, we'll kind of wrap this up. We'll definitely be talking more about the state of the economy, the state of the market, things that are coming out of Congress and what's happening there. Especially here come probably February time-ish when Anthony does his annual like state of the market address. So definitely look for information to come about that, where he'll kind of be really going into detail and sort of foreshadowing what he thinks is going to maybe take place over this next year. So I know we all look forward to that every year. So that'll be exciting. And then also just to foreshadow a little bit too, in terms of end of the year things, but then also just things to think about come January. Our webinar for January is going to be on estate planning and just sort of what types of things we should be refreshing, double checking at the beginning of the year, come January, making sure things are in place. So also look for some more information to come about that as well. But anyways, any last questions or anything from those of you guys on the coffee chat today? Otherwise, any last thoughts from you guys?
I would like to point out your tax documents will probably be out mid to late January to the very first week in February. So just look for them. They may be accessible earlier online, but I just want to give you kind of a heads up that that's what you can expect.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in from anybody. So we'll end with our wheel here and spin to see who gets a free cup of coffee on us today. Thanks everybody for joining us for the coffee chat. And here we go.
Jeff Stein.
Only I would have put your name in, Jeff. I'm sure it would have landed on you.
Registered.
Charles, congratulations. We'll be sending you a cup of coffee on us. If I can figure out a way how to send some peppermint Baileys or schnapps with it, I'll do that too.
You're very generous.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the coffee chat, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Bye-bye.
happy New Year and a very Merry Christmas.